Thank you, everyone. And I think everyone is looking forward to this particular session. One, because of the gentlemen who we have on stage, their rich experience, all of us stand to gain from it. And constantly as a country, we are wondering, especially on the back of what has happened in Pahalgam, during Operation Sindoor, have we learned lessons from our past and what could we do better from here on? So when we are talking about learning from history, let's first delve into recent history. And I want to start with you, Admiral Arun Prakash. When you look at Operation Sindoor, what is the one thing which you think was a complete success? It was tactical brilliance. And one thing which you think you would have want done better? What is a lesson that we can take away from Operation Sindoor and do better next time?
Well, thank you for that question. To start with, Operation Sindoor itself was a great learning lesson for all of us. I mean, the last major war that we fought was in 1971. So between 71 and 2025, there has been at least 2 quantum jumps in terms of technology. You know, battlefield transparency, networking, the range of sensors, the range of weapons, etc. So there's been a huge jump. So Operation Sindoor was itself a learning, lesson for the armed forces. So at this moment, people like you, television anchors, possibly know more about what happened in Operation Sindoor than laymen like us. So until the full picture comes out and we know what happened on both sides, I'm sure the armed forces have done their debriefs, etc., and they draw the right lessons. But for outsiders at this moment, it's difficult to prognosticate how to do things better, because I think things went off very well in this particular operation. We struck. Our intelligence was good. We struck deep into the enemy territory. The precision of our weapons was excellent. We hit targets that we wanted to. The coordination between the 3 services was as required. So all these were the good points. Now, how to improve on them? I'm sure the armed forces are working on plans for Sindoor. Sindoor is still underway. So when the next round comes, I'm sure all the lessons learned from this phase of Sindoor will be applied in the next phase.
General Pandey, if there's one thing that had everyone concerned, is when it emerged that China had played a role. Both Pakistan and China were acting together, especially when it came to intelligence, the giving of drones, the operation of drones. What can we do better next time, especially in dealing with China, considering that Operation Sindoor is underway? General Pandey, sir.
So I think one of the important lessons for us was as to how, so far we used to say that, look, China would assist Pakistan during, operation, during conflict scenario, etc., etc. But I think this time it came out loud and clear that it is more like they are conjoined. So it's not only just, it's more than maybe supply of equipment, weapon system, etc. You saw them operate together. Their SOPs, their methods of operation. So this is, I think, something which we will have to factor as we go forward and maybe study more in depth to figure out as to what would this mean, right? So it is no longer a two-front. It is you have one adversary, but you have both of them together. So this is, I feel, across all domains, in the ground domain, in the air domain, as also in the maritime, less so. But this is something which we will have to, study in great detail, I feel.
And why I ask this, sir, is because during your tenure, we had seen tension with China. Do you think this time we were more alert to the fact that while Pakistan was the main aggressor, you also had China working in the background? That was a lesson that we took away from our dealings with China in the past.
Well, we've always factored this. So we always war game situations, discuss situation as to how one would assess the other. In military parlance, we would call it collusivity, and how would that manifest? So this was something which was already planned, and I'm sure, our field formation commanders on ground would have sort of taken measures, and they did take measures to make sure that while we are engaged with an adversary on one side, things remain quiet or you remain balanced on the other side.
Air Marshal Chaudhari, what would be your biggest takeaway from Operation Sindhur? Since we are talking about learning from our past, what is it that we should keep in mind going forward now?
I think this is very straightforward. And the answer is that air power need not ever be escalatory. This operation has busted the myth that use of only air power for offensive action will escalate the conflict. Okay, this myth has been busted by this. We can definitely control the use of air power, use it for gaining the strategic objectives, use it for pinpoint accuracy, use it to create effects that will change the balance of equation between nations.
How do you see the Air Force? Of course, the Air Force has got the maximum press. It was at the forefront of the operations. What do you think that could have been done better?
There's no end to having a wish list for what we should have had and what we should bid for in future to make ourselves more potent to face two adversaries. And like General Pandey brought out, the asymmetry that is brought about by the collisionary is something that we have to comprehend and we have to prepare ourselves against. So the Admiral also brought out 2 or 3 key issues. One is increased battlefield transparency through better sensors, better networking, wielding the longer stick. That means having longer weapons, whether it is surface to air or air to ground and so on. So like I said, the list can be endless. But primarily, these are 3 or 4 factors which we think we should have been much stronger at that time, and we should bid for better equipment and better hardware in future.
Admiral Prakash, what do you think the Navy's role was this time around? Like I said, most of the news, most of the focus was on the Air Force and then the Army. What about the Navy's role?
Firstly, going back to your first question, one thing we could certainly improve upon is intelligence of enemy capabilities, especially since Pakistan is being fully backed by Chinese equipment and weapons. Then I think it's essential that we should know the capabilities of what China has or will supply to them. Coming back to the Navy's role, the Navy, as you know, is traditionally known as the silent service. So both the fleets, the Eastern and Western fleets, had positioned themselves off the coast of Pakistan. The coast of Pakistan is limited relatively. It's 1,000 kilometers with just 2 or 3 major ports, Karachi, Port Qasim. And Pakistan is notionally a landlocked country. Most of their trade, energy, etc. comes from the sea. So by positioning itself off the Pakistani coast, the Indian Navy had sent some very strong signals that if things come to a pass where we need to go into action, we will blockade Pakistan, and they have experience of that in 1971. We blocked both wings of Pakistan. So we could blockade Pakistan, cut off all trade, and that actually happened. Not many ships went in and out of. And secondly, if the government had decided on kinetic action from the seawards, then the Navy had all the wherewithal. They had fighters on board the aircraft carrier. The carrier battle group was positioned there. Ships are carrying BrahMos missiles, which were used by the Air Force and the Army. So the Navy had a similar capability. Our ships, our submarines also carry land attack missiles. So had it come to that situation, the Navy could have launched a full-fledged kinetic attack from seawards and brought immense pressure. But unlike the Air Force, which the Air Chief Marshal mentioned is not escalatory, the use of maritime power can be escalatory because you're operating in international waters. It has implications. So I presume there is a factor that weighed with the government.
Do you think, General Pandey, that Operation Sindoor also defined, in a sense, the strategic capability of the Indian Army, and this is going to be something, it's not just limited to Operation Sindoor, it's going to be the hallmark going forward as well?
Indeed, and I would say not only the Army per se, but also the armed forces, right? Because here was a situation, here is a good example as to how the defense forces of a country can be, if I may, put to good use to achieve strategic objectives. So I think the defense forces in this case came on their own, be it the Navy, Air Force or the Army. And whatever were the strategic objectives that were set for them, I think it was a good example of how these were achieved. So yes,
And you've also said that actually this was the best showcase of Atmanirbharta. So far we had spoken a lot about it over the last 11 years. We had put a lot of focus on it, a lot of emphasis on it. But did it in a way redeem itself? The push that we have given to Atmanirbharta of being self-reliant as a country, did Operation Sindoor vindicate that stand that we've had over the last few years?
indeed. So, when you talk of Atmanirbharta, I have been highlighting there are two aspects to it. One is acquiring new capabilities, that is new acquisition, and second is sustenance of our war effort. So in both cases, in the latter case, things such as ammunition, whatever it takes to sort of sustain a war, I think in both these fields, we've had good examples where we saw our indigenous weapon systems, they proved themselves. So it was a good validation of the capability of our indigenously produced weapon systems, which we saw both for the Army as well as for the
Air Marshal
Navy.
Chaudhary?
We just heard Mr. Rane speaking about the BrahMos, and Shiv flashed the iconic picture of the damage done at Bolari.
Yeah.
I think what better can,
The best advertisement that can be.
best advertisement for our indigenous capabilities.
Did you see the kind of coordination that you were hoping? Because often the complaint has been that the different arms do not work in time of crisis. There is a lack of communication, or the kind of coordination that is ideal is not seen. In the operation, did you see all the forces working together with the kind of coordination that you would have liked?
Absolutely. What we witnessed was complete synergy, complete understanding of each other's strengths and weaknesses, and the effort, what came out finally was a joint effort from all the three services and, of course, the higher defense organization of this country. So there is no doubt in my mind, at least, that there was any lack of coordination or synergy between the armed forces.
When you said, sir, that there should be better intelligence about our enemy capability, can you elaborate on that? Do you think that somewhere we were caught off guard with exactly what the enemy capability is, and that is going to be very crucial moving forward?
Yes, one example which one gathered from the media was the use of a Chinese-made air-to-air missile called PL-15. Now they were varying versions of what range it could engage targets at. So I think it happened to be the primary weapon of the Pakistan Air Force. So I think if we had an inkling that Pakistan Air Force is armed with a PL-15, then we should have known much more about its capabilities, its envelope in which it can be used. This is just one example. But if China is going to be backing Pakistan the way it is, then we will certainly need to know far more and in far more depth about the capabilities of Chinese weapon systems if they are going to be our main opposition.
General Pandey, how do we balance our equation with China? Because we're speaking at a time where we are talking about a great reset. Diplomatically, we are trying to strike a balance with China, but militarily, we also have to be extremely cautious of what they are trying to do. How do you strike that balance?
No, there are different aspects to it in terms of what you do when you're deployed at the border, in terms of our visibility of what is happening across, and that comprises strategic ability or our ability to pick up movement, strategic intelligence, so to speak. Also as to what is happening right there in the border, across the border. So that is one aspect. Second is to be able to study your adversary's tactics, his strategies, his operational concepts, right? As also the technology, what equipment, what weapon system he has, or the adversary has. So I think it's a mix of all this that you figure out as to what your adversary's capabilities are. If there are any capability gaps from our side, you try and bridge those gaps. As also if there are strengths from our side, so you build on your strength, consolidate your strength, and try and mitigate any shortcomings if there are any. So I think that is how you would, in terms of your preparedness for any future situation, I would suggest that must be, or that should be our approach.
Air Marshal Chaudhary?
Yeah, asymmetry can be overcome not merely by bean count of weapon systems and hardware that you have, but more through innovation and, the human being's ability to think ahead of the enemy. Okay, and I think for that we are adequately trained and we are adequately prepared. The focus has always been on trying to develop an asymmetry through innovative use of the existing weapon systems that we have. So I think this is our strength. Better training, better tactics, better procedures. This is our strength and we must capitalize on this.
For a lay person, one always thinks, we saw the presentation in the morning and the kind of strikes that we have done, we have managed to strike air bases in Pakistan, we have managed to destroy their terror infrastructure. But a lay person thinks all of this is just going to come back. A lot of people also, there was, the political debate that happened as well. But to set that aside, they said, at the end of the day, what have you achieved if you have destroyed infrastructure, which they are going to build right back? How does one address those questions? Is there a head of the snake, as it were, which is the ultimate goal, which you say, okay, this is done, now it's never going to be able to spring back?
The first principle of war, as we are taught, anybody in uniform, is selection and maintenance of aim. And I think here we were very clear on what the aim was, to destroy the terrorist headquarters and infrastructure. And once we faced the brunt of, the oncoming drones from Pakistan on the 8th of May, then retaliation, because they were targeting our military targets. So retaliation was necessary and mandated, and it was calibrated. It could have escalated. We had the capability. We could have hit him harder than what we did. But somewhere somebody has to draw a line and say, okay, this is it, we'll call it off. We've shown you what we can do. We can do more of it.
What do you say to people, there is always this feeling, sir, and it's been said again and again, and I have to say this is not just about the politics. A lot of the general public also said that when you had them on your knees, why didn't you go in for the kill? How does one decide what the kill is? Can you take that first, Admiral Arun Prakash? What is the kill? Like I said, what is the head of that snake which you say, okay, this is it?
Yes, in addition to what the Air Chief Marshal said, one of the aims was to destroy or attempt to destroy terrorist camps. But the larger aim was to send a message of deterrence to Pakistan. Now, deterrence means that, you've done it 2 or 3 or 4 times, but don't do it again, or worse, reprisals will take place. So that was a big message to be sent across, deterrence, message of deterrence. Now, only time will tell whether that message has got across to Pakistan or not. So that's one. And secondly, we should not underestimate Pakistan. I mean, whatever has happened in Sindhur is a good message, good signaling. We've wreaked destruction on them. But Pakistan, as you know, is policies are guided by what is known as the deep state, the ISI and the military. And it is in their interest to keep this pot boiling. So I'm not sure whether the message of deterrence has gone across to the deep Pakistani deep state. And as I said, only time will tell, but I suspect that we will have more such occurrences.
You think so?
It's quite possible that, and for that, we need to build up, the very fact that they've been doing this to us over and over again means that our conventional deterrence, our nuclear deterrence has held, but our conventional deterrence has not been adequate to send the right signal to Pakistan that don't you dare undertake cross.
How do you think this should be added?
So we need to spend more money to bolster our conventional forces, to get all the capabilities. Modernization of the armed forces has been delayed for many years for various reasons. So we need to build up our Air Force. The Air Force has been crying hoarse. We need to build up whatever the army needs. So we need to build up a clear superiority conventionally over Pakistan. That superiority was in place, but it has been eroded because of the support that China has been given to them, and because we have delayed the modernization of our own armed forces. So we need to restore conventional superiority so that it will send the right message of deterrence. Hopefully Sindhur has done its share, but we need more.
General Pandey, very important thing that Admiral Arun Prakash said, that there is the very real possibility that despite us having tried to send out a message, Pakistan every time comes back and their tactics keep changing. First there was 26/11, they struck at an urban center, then they went to Kashmir, they struck at tourists, which so far had been, it had been a taboo. You didn't kill innocent tourists. That has also happened. What next? And how should we be prepared for that? There's the conventional deterrence, of course, we do our modernization, etc. But what else can we do? And in what nature do you foresee that the next attack, God forbid it should happen, will come?
Well, I feel we have to be prepared across the entire spectrum of conflict, right? So we still have to be prepared for acts of terror, perhaps infiltration from across the border. So you cannot let the guard off there. So while you are doing this, you still have to, or you must continue to focus on building your conventional capabilities. So, and there is also this aspect of gray zone. So while you are preparing to fight a conventional war, you require a different set of capabilities in certain cases to fight in the gray zone. So I believe you have to strike a good balance between what conventional war fighting capability you require vis-a-vis what you require to operate in the gray zone. So if you get that balance right, I think that is the key, so that across the entire spectrum of conflict, you also need to be operational ready at all times, because we have seen from what we have seen in the past decade, you have to be prepared for black swan events. Like somebody said, you have to expect the unexpected. So your operational readiness levels can never be sort of below optimum. So that is something which we'll have to continuously focus on, and focus equally on developing capabilities across the entire conflict spectrum, both on the west as well as on the northern.
Do you think our modernization has been done at a pace that you are satisfied with?
Well, modernization and technology infusion has been one of the key features of the three services, as also the focus of the government through the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat. So while there is technology coming in and you have good startup, you had some of them, you heard them out. So we have a very vibrant startup ecosystem. The bigger defense industry, they are coming in. The academia and the research and development people, they need to be stepping up. So only when you have this entire defense manufacturing ecosystem synergized will we get the results. But here again, it's not just the infusion of technology and modernization. Alongside it must be the changes that you bring about to your operational concepts, philosophies. You need to enhance the technological threshold of your soldiers. You need to change your, we call it TTPs, tactics, techniques and procedures. So this entire gamut of things have to be addressed. Not just you buy some high-tech gizmos and new weapon systems. That is only part of it. Then only you will be able to fully optimize or maximize the potential of...
Could you give a few examples? What kind of changes? When you say that tactics and procedures, you need to keep changing them, in what way?
So in the previous session, you spoke of drones. So if you have drones of different kinds, carrying out different functions, you have drones which can be used as loiter munition, for logistic purposes, for surveillance, and the rest of it. So if you have drones, correspondingly, you will have to modify your organizations, certain organizational structures. You will have to have an operating philosophy as to how you will employ those drones. So that is what I'm saying. It's not only Army, the Air Force would have drones. So how do the drones of the Air Force and the Army operate together? Not only the Air Force and the Army, you also have the BSF which is deployed on the borders. So they also have drones operating. So this entire thing has to be looked at holistically to be able to, again, maximize the potential of technology such as the drone technology, or for that matter, counter-drone technology.
Marshal Chaudhari?
Yeah, I'll echo what the General had to say. Primarily, adopting new technologies requires very flexible mindsets. The armed forces, the desire is always to work at the pace of, Moore's law. We want to double the number of the computing power on a chip every second year. We want the newer systems. But the whole machinery of procurement does not move at the same pace. So with this huge gap between what we really want and what technology can provide us, and how we manage our acquisition process, the gap will always remain. The idea is to anticipate for the future. The idea is to train our people for the kind of warfare that can be fought with new generation weapons. with artificial intelligence being thrown in a big way in most of our systems, in helping our decision making and so on.
Moving forward, sir, what do you think of theatre commands? Would you like to take that first, sir?
Yeah. You know, we are talking about the future of warfare in the 21st century, and the theme for this session is learning from past, right? So if I join the dots together, what we have to look at is what kind of structures are going to meet the requirement for future warfare. There are 2 or 3 issues that need to be considered. Number one is that today the combatant, whether he is a pilot in a 4.5 generation aircraft or even a foot soldier, a combatant has got adequate capability and adequate data to be able to take a decision to achieve the effects on his own, without having to refer back to a long decision-making chain, a traditional decision-making chain. You know, so in such an environment, it would be prudent to look at a structure which allows decentralized control and execution of any combat. So whatever structure we look at, okay, you call it a theatre command, you call it a joint command, or whatever it is, it has to cater for, you know, the faster decision cycles without adding multiple layers. It has to shorten the sensor to shooter time, as we say. Okay, and it has to be adaptive to newer technologies. So we cannot live in the past by looking at, you know, or comparing with somebody else that they've got this structure, so we should copy the same. We should devise our own. And here is where actual Atmanirbharta is not merely in manufacturing and in hardware. It's Atmanirbharta in thought. We need to think on our own. We need to look at what challenges we are going to be faced with, which are very unique to us.
Yeah. Admiral Arun Prakash, what do you think of theatre commands?
Well, I'm a little surprised that in 2025 you're asking a question about theatre commands. And to answer your question, we need to go into into geography and history. I hope you have the time. Geographically, India's military power is divided into 19 commands. 17 of them are single service and 2 of them are joint. So to mount any operation, you'll need power from 1, 2 or 3 of these commands. And I recall from my days as chairman, Chiefs of Staff Committee, that coordination, cooperation, etc. is a very vexed issue. So that's the geography part of it. Now, historically, we managed to do quite well militarily. We prevailed in almost all our operations. But I think we've been fortunate. And the services have worked together. But Kargil was one instance where we got a bad fright. It was a near disaster from which we retrieved the situation only by the bravery of our officers and jawans. But the fright that the government got, government of that day, they convened a committee within 2 weeks of the conclusion, Kargil Review Committee, which went into national security. Then the government convened a group of ministers headed by Mr. L.K. Advani, Deputy Prime Minister. And out of this came a series of recommendations. One was constitute a Chief of Defence Staff, Vice Chief of Defence Staff, constitute 2 joint service commands. One was the Strategic Forces Command and one was the Andaman Nicobar Command. But it stopped there because of political inertia, bureaucratic resistance and dissonance within the armed forces. Nothing happened after this. Now fast forward to 2020 when this government in a very historic step constituted a Chief of Defence Staff. The Chief of Defence Staff was given 2 main charters. One is to bring jointness into the armed forces and secondly was, at the end of it, create theatre commands. And this decision was not just pulled out of a hat. It is the culmination of historical lessons learned, the wisdom of these committees, group of ministers. There was another committee called Naresh Chandra Committee which had a similar. So all this wisdom has come about through experience. So I think theatre command, now it's 5 years since the CDS was created, nothing much has happened. So we need to overcome whatever, there are very reasonable objections to theatre command. We need to discuss them, negotiate, overcome them, and get on with it.
General Pandey, would you say that that really should be the biggest learning? That we need theatre commands, whatever issues are there, whatever reservations are there, that should be one lesson we take from the past, that this is something that is essential for us moving forward.
I agree. See, this issue has been under discussion for 3 years or more. We all understand, perhaps accept the requirement for having a method by which the combat potential of all the three services is utilized or maximized. Your operational efficiency is enhanced and there is better synergy. And that is the basic reason or rationale for establishing the theatre commands. Of course, it's a given we need to have a tailor-made, custom-made organization which suits our requirement, the Indian requirements, which are peculiar, where you have contested borders, you have distinct geographical theatres and the rest of it. It might necessitate changes in the organizational structures, command and control arrangements as also functioning. So in my view, I think the necessity or the acceptance is there. Now, what form it takes, in what manner it is customized to meet our requirements is something which can be discussed. Here, if I may add, we spoke of Operation Sindoor. I see understanding amongst common people that future wars are going to be fought in the same manner as was Op Sindoor. So people have been talking that future wars will be only drones, counter-drones, beyond visual range and the rest of it. We have to be very careful. I feel this is one of the ways by which wars will be fought. The drones, the counter UAS systems will have an important role to play. But the usefulness, the viability of conventional war-fighting systems, in my view, will still remain. So based on the lessons or what you saw during Op Sindoor, I feel that should not be the benchmark for us to, evolve our organization structures, change our thinking entirely, change our operational philosophies and the rest of it. So that kind of, caution, if I may, we need to be very careful evolving it. Because in the last 25 years, we've seen, right from Kargil war and then you had Op Parakram, you've seen different methods or different ways in which, wars will unfold. So that is my mark.
Well, it is said rightly that those who do not learn from the mistakes of the past are also doomed to repeat it in the future. Hopefully, all of the words, all of the issues that you've heard addressed over here, lessons will be learned because future wars will happen and India has to be war ready. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom.